Low candlelight made everything look expensive until you touched it. Cutlery clicked like metronomes. A laugh from the bar. The soft, smug shkti of velvet as the jewelry box slid across the table. In your hand was your gift, a cheap gag item, lightweight, plasticky, the kind of thing that still smells like a novelty aisle. You kept your thumb on the edge of it, feeling how the seam didn't quite line up. Across from you, your mother didn't look at the box. She looked at you, like she was correcting a story in her head. You hadn't asked for diamonds. You hadn't even asked for money. You'd asked, quietly, carefully, for the kind of respect that doesn't cost anything. The kind that says, I'm your child. I belong here. Your voice stayed low, almost polite. Can you just not do this in front of everyone? Your mother leaned in just enough to make it intimate, just enough to make it feel like a private lesson, delivered at full volume without raising her voice. Then she said it, clean and final, like she'd been waiting to use the line, "You don't get diamonds, you get what you are," a joke. Short sentence, no heat, no hesitation. It landed with the same force as a slap, except it didn't leave a mark anyone could point to. The air in your chest thinned. For half a second, you couldn't find your breath, like the room had quietly stolen it. And immediately, because your body remembered, your mind threw you somewhere else. Not memory as a story, a flash image, a survival image, a dark room. The tiny square of light from a medication window cutting across the floor. Orange bottles. Wrong bottle. Kneeing your fingers counting pills because you couldn't trust the label. The cold metal of a spoon against your tongue. Muffled crying pushed into a pillow so nobody would hear. Not drama, not metaphor. Just a child learning, early, that value could decide whether a body makes it through the night. Back at the table, your hand shook once, small, involuntary. A tremor that tried to climb your wrist. Your fork hovered. Your brain blanked so completely it was almost peaceful. Then you did what you always did. You put the fork down, slowly. You pressed your fingertips into the linen so they'd stop betraying you. You nodded once, neutral, not agreement, just control. Your face didn't change. Your voice stayed calm. Okay, you said, as if she'd commented on the weather. A tiny composure, rebuilt in real time. And because you already knew the rule, if you reacted, she'd own the moment. If you stayed steady, she'd be forced to sit inside her own words. For a beat, she watched you like she was waiting for the performance. Tears, pleading, a raised voice she could later summarize as unstable. You gave her nothing, and that was the first thing she didn't get. You glanced at the velvet box again. It looked heavier than it was. It looked like proof, like an exhibit, like something that would make sense later, when it wasn't just the two of you in candlelight, because this wouldn't stay here, not as a family story she could edit, not as a joke she could repeat at holidays. This exact moment, the cheap object, the line, the way you held your face still, would be replayed again, in a room with rules, with witnesses, and with no place to hide a sentence inside a smile. You didn't say that out loud. You didn't threaten. You didn't warn. You simply let inevitability sit in the space between you, quiet as the flame in the candle. Then the server arrived. Young, professional, a practiced kindness that didn't ask questions. Whenever you're ready, they said, placing the card reader between the water glasses with a polite smile. The screen lit up, a soft beep. Your mother reached for it like it belonged to her, like everything did. The machine processed. And in that smallest pause, 2 seconds of blank screen, the tiniest delay before approval or decline, something shifted. not the bill, the balance of the table. Because you weren't panicking anymore. You were watching. And for the first time in a long time, you didn't feel like a joke. You felt like a record being made. You don't get a scene. That's the first promise. No screaming in the parking lot. No trembling monologue over dessert. No, you'll regret this. Hissed through a smile. The kind of reaction that turns your pain into their entertainment. You don't give her that. You let the joke sit on the table like a receipt. Lightweight, obvious, impossible to confuse with love. And you do something colder than anger. You document. Not theatrically. Quietly. The way people do when they've learned that family can be the first courtroom you ever lose in, because the other side rewrites faster than you can speak. This story doesn't pay off with a fight. It pays off with timing. Because the thing your mother tried to do in that restaurant wasn't really about jewelry. It was an identity crime, an attempt to decide, yet in front of witnesses, what kind of person you're allowed to be. A joke, not a daughter, not an adult, not someone with boundaries. Just a punchline she can claim ownership of. And here's the part she never understands in the moment. You can survive humiliation. She can't survive a record. So you make a clear pledge to yourself right there, behind your neutral nod. This doesn't stay private. Not because you need revenge. Because private is where she edits. Private is where she calls other people later and says, with practiced sadness, you know how she gets. Private is where she tells the story with you removed from it. But the boomerang is already in the air. The humiliation attempt is going to come back. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but in a public setting where she can't rewrite the transcript. A setting with rules. A setting where interruptions don't count as truth. A setting where someone else controls the order of events. And for the audience, this is the contract. You're not about to drag them through a long childhood montage to earn sympathy. You're not going to front-load tragedy to justify what happens next. No early backstory. You'll see the exact moment the villains lose control of the narrative first. Clean, present tense, undeniable. Then, only when it matters, the facts will step forward one by one, like lights coming on in a hallway. Because the justice in this story isn't emotional, it's procedural. It's receipts. 2 categories. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatized. Statements, emails, logs, the boring things people dismiss. Until they're the only things that don't lie. And when those documents finally enter the room, when it won't feel like a sudden twist, it will feel like inevitability catching up. That's the kind of payoff you're here for. Not a meltdown, but a power flip you can see. Not violence, not sabotage, not a public smear campaign. Dignified, nonviolent, witnessed. The kind of consequence that doesn't require you to become someone you don't respect just to win. Because the goal isn't to ruin her life. The goal is simpler and sharper. She loses control. She loses the story. She loses access. And you gain what you should have had all along: stability, authority, peace. So when that restaurant moment comes back later, when it's replayed in a room with rules and witnesses, it won't be you begging to be seen. It'll be her, realizing she's finally been watched. And the best part? You still won't raise your voice. You won't have to. In the present day, there are no loose ends in the protagonist's life that people can point at and call deserved. They are the kind of person who replies to emails the same day. The kind of person who shows up 5 minutes early and sits in the car for 2 of them, just to breathe and not arrive with chaos on them. Reliable, employed. Their own keys on their own ring. Their own name on their own lease. They pay their way without making it a speech. Quiet card tap. Quiet thank you. No lingering at the register like they want to be noticed for it. At family events, they don't arrive like a headline. They arrive like a chair being placed back under the table. They bring a bottle of wine if it's that kind of dinner, a pie if it's that kind of holiday. They ask if anyone needs ice on the way. Good, they offer to help clear plates without looking around for applause. They remember birthdays without turning them into contracts. And most importantly, when they walk into a room where their mother is smiling too wide and their sister is already glowing in the center of it, they don't compete. That's the inner rule. Not written down, not announced, just lived. Never compete with the sister. Never ask the parents to choose. Never mention the past out loud. Because the past, in that family, isn't history. It's ammunition. So the protagonist stays clean. They stay boring. They stay reasonable in a way that is almost surgical. They don't talk about what hurt. They don't demand apologies that would only be used later as proof they're dramatic. They don't bring up the years that still wake up in their body sometimes, uninvited. They just show up. They do the basic math of peace. And that's why what happens next lands so hard, because even in their own head, they are not asking for much. They're not asking to be celebrated. They're not asking to be reimbursed. They're not asking for diamonds. They're asking for one small human thing: respect, inclusion, honesty. The kind of thing a family should give by default. The way you pass the salt without turning it into a lesson. It comes in a moment so small it almost looks harmless from across a room. A seating chart, a toast, a group photo, a story being told with missing pieces. The protagonist leans in, not loudly, not dramatically, a half step closer. A quiet voice aimed at the person who still has the power to make the room safe or sharp. Their mother. Can you just not make me the joke? Not stop spending money on her. Not pick me. Not you owe me. Just don't do that thing where you make me into comic relief so the room knows where to place me. A basic request, a basic boundary. And the response is immediate. Not explosive, not even angry. That's the cruelty of it. I'm their mother doesn't have to raise her voice. She doesn't have to say anything that would sound cruel if it were written down in a text message. She just gives a look that says, "Don't embarrass me by needing something." Then a sentence, delivered with that calm, polished tone, like she's correcting a child's posture. "Oh, don't be so sensitive." It's the kind of line that sounds like reason, until you realize it always travels in one direction. Sensitive is what they call you when you notice patterns. The protagonist doesn't argue. They don't perform their pain for proof. They don't list examples. They don't try to win the room. They do something quieter. They comply. Not submission, control. They nod once. Neutral. Their face stays composed. In that way, people learn when they've been punished for having emotions in the wrong order. "Okay," they say. Calm. And then they step back into their role. Helpful, present, quiet, like they can fold themselves smaller without anyone hearing the fabric tear. Because the audience can feel the trap tightening, this is how people get erased without a fight. And then, because the protagonist is not a saint, just disciplined, there's a private flicker, a self-check. It happens fast, like a reflex. Am I being too sensitive? Was that actually rude? Did I imagine the tone? They scan the moment the way you scan a bruise you can't remember earning. But the body knows. The stomach knows. That earlier restaurant line, "You get what you are," a joke, still sits in them like a label they're trying not to wear. So they reset. They don't spiral. They don't plead. They return to calm the way you return to breath after a cough. No, it was real. But I'm not asking for much. They pick up a plate. They refill a water glass. They keep their voice steady. This is the innocence lock. They keep behaving like a good person even when the room keeps treating them like a punchline. And the contrast is constant. The sister gets celebratory framing. When the sister walks in, the room shifts to make space. People turn toward her like she's music. Someone says her name like it's a gift. Their mother's face changes, softens, brightens, like she's been waiting all day to be proud. Stories about the sister are told like achievements. She's so busy. She's doing amazing. You should have seen the way everyone looked at her. Even the flaws are dressed up. Even the mistakes get a ribbon. The protagonist, meanwhile, gets assigned a role. Comic relief. Not in a fun way. More like a pressure valve for everyone else's comfort. The person you can lightly tease to keep the room warm. The person you can interrupt because they'll let you. The person you can reduce into a story beat because they won't fight back and ruin the vibe. The jokes about them aren't loud. That's what makes them effective. A comment about what they're wearing. A little laugh about their job being stable. A mock sympathetic tone. Oh, you and your rules. And each time the protagonist does the same thing. Small smile, neutral nod, no confrontation, because they've learned something that keeps them alive. In some families, the moment you defend yourself, you become the problem. So they don't defend. They don't ask for luxury. They ask for basics. Dupa. And they keep their hands clean while everyone else keeps reaching for the same old script. Which is exactly why, later, when the story moves into that room with rules and witnesses, the power flip won't feel like revenge. It'll feel like gravity. Because you can only call someone a joke for so long before the room starts wondering why you need them to stay small. The pattern never starts with something you can point to. It starts with things that sound reasonable. Small changes, small oversights, small jokes. Each one alone is defensible. That's the design. Because if you confront a single incident, you look unstable. Like you're making a federal case out of a paper cut. And in that family, the moment you look too much, the verdict arrives fast. So the protagonist keeps doing what they always do. And they comply with rules nobody says out loud. They keep their voice level. They keep their hands busy. They keep their face neutral. They don't demand a place at the table. They just keep showing up to the same table, hoping the chair will eventually be there. And that's how it accumulates. Month by month, year by year. Like dust you don't notice until you wipe a finger across the surface and realize it's thick. Here's what it looks like. It's a Thursday in late fall. The protagonist pulls into the driveway with a store-bought dessert balanced on the passenger seat. The container is sweating slightly from the heat in the car. There's a warm smell of cinnamon and plastic lid. They check their phone one more time. Same text thread. Same last message. Dinner at 6. They're not late. They're on time with the kind of caution that comes from experience. They walk in, and the sound hits them first. Forks already moving, plates already clinking, voices already full. The living room smells like roasted meat and butter. Everyone is already eating, not starting, eating. Their mother doesn't look up right away. When she does, her face performs a quick flash of surprise, then smooths into a smile that isn't quite a welcome. "Oh," she says, light. "We forgot to tell you dinner moved?" Moved. Like the schedule is a piece of furniture they rearranged while you were in traffic. The protagonist blinks once. There's a small, involuntary pause where the body tries to decide, is this an accident? Or is this that? Nobody stops chewing. Nobody says, wait, hold on. Nobody slides a plate back like they want to restart time. The protagonist sets the dessert down carefully, like noise could break something. "It's okay," they say. That phrase becomes a reflex. They wash their hands. They step around elbows. They find a spot in the kitchen where they won't block anyone, where they can still be helpful. It's never don't come, it's come, but arrive as an afterthought. Then there's the seating. Not dramatic, never dramatic. Thanksgiving, a birthday, a graduation dinner, different dates, same geometry. The sister's seat is always saved. Saved with a napkin folded just so. Saved with a glass already filled. Saved with the easy confidence of someone who doesn't wonder if they belong. The protagonist arrives and stands for half a second, just long enough to register the layout. There's a chair at the end, near the kitchen door, near the traffic. Near the place where people get up and down and brush past your shoulder without noticing. Sometimes it's not even a full chair, sometimes it's a stool. Their mother says it like she's being practical. Can you sit there? It's just easier. Easier for who is never discussed. The protagonist doesn't argue. They smile. Sure. They tuck in, shoulders slightly turned so they don't get hit by swinging cabinet doors. They keep moving their knees back every time someone passes with a tray. Their sister walks in later and drops into her saved seat like it's assigned by birthright. Someone says, "There she is?" The protagonist says nothing. Not jealousy, not competition, just noticing. Then the birthday texts. Those are their own special category, because they're written to be screenshot safe. Happy birthday! Hope you have a good one. No nickname, no memory, no warmth. It reads like an automated reminder you swipe away. Sometimes it comes early in the morning, before anyone is awake enough to be cruel. Sometimes it comes late, like someone finally saw the calendar and thought, "Oh, right." And if the protagonist replies with something kind, "Thank you, that means a lot," the response is a thumbs up. A thumbs up from the person who taught them language. Affection doesn't get refused. It gets replaced with something you can't accuse. Then come the gifts. Not gifts like poverty. Gifts like message, clearance stickers half peeled off, a candle with the label crooked and a scent that feels aggressive, like fake vanilla cupcake hitting your face. A mug with a slogan that is technically funny, if the person holding it isn't the punchline. One year, it's a shirt in the wrong size. Not slightly wrong, wrong like nobody checked, wrong like nobody held it up and thought, would this fit her? Their mother hands it over with a bright smile. Open it, it's hilarious. The protagonist laughs once, politely, small exhale through the nose, the kind of laugh that ends quickly. Thank you, they say, because thank you is safer than honesty. And then, under the laughter, comes the line that makes it prank adjacent. You're such a good sport. Translation: you'll tolerate being reduced. The protagonist folds the tissue paper back into the bag. They keep the gift in their lap like it's normal. They don't start a scene. They don't become the story. Then there are the photos. Those hurt because they happen twice. First, in the moment. Get in, someone says, phone already up. Family photo. The protagonist steps in and finds the edge because they've learned the center is reserved. They angle their body in, making sure they're visible, smiling gently, not too much. The flash goes off. Everyone disperses immediately after, like the photo was a chore. Later that night, the protagonist sees it posted. Caption: my whole world. And somehow, the protagonist is cropped out. Not fully. Not like an intentional erasure, worse, a sliver of shoulder, a hand. And the edge of their hair like proof they were there but not worth including. When someone notices and comments, because sometimes a distant cousin will say, "Where's she?" the answer arrives fast. "Oh my God, it was an accident. Don't be weird." Don't be weird. Not. I'm sorry. Not. Let me fix it. Just. Don't make the omission visible. The protagonist hits like, They don't comment. They put the phone down face up on the counter and stare at it for a second longer than they should. Being left out doesn't look like violence. It looks like a crop tool. And then there's the dismissals, the kind that come with laughter so it can pass as affection. The protagonist mentions a medical appointment, a new prescription, a migraine that's been hanging on for days, a panic feeling that arrives without permission. Not as a sob story, not to be rescued, just as a fact. Something you say when you're trying to be included in a conversation about your own life. Their mother smiles and lets out a little laugh. "Oh, here we go," she says, like it's a sitcom catchphrase. "You're so dramatic," the sister adds. "It's always something." Everyone chuckles like it's harmless. The protagonist nods. "Yeah," they say, even though that word tastes wrong. They stop talking about it. Not because they're cured, because they're trained. Then comes the line that ties all of it together, because it sounds like praise if you don't listen closely. "You're so independent. You don't need anything." It gets said with a proud tilt of the head, like it's a compliment, like it's admiration. But it functions like a permission slip for neglect. It means, we don't have to check on you. We don't have to include you. And we don't have to care for you the way we care for her. And if you point out the gap, they can smile and say, "What? We're complimenting you." Every incident gets smoothed over with the same 3 phrases, rotated like a playlist. "Don't be difficult." "It's not that deep." "You know how she is." There is always a reason to swallow it. There is never a reason for them to stop doing it. So the protagonist keeps their response pattern. Consistent, almost ritual. Polite smile, offers to help. "I can take those dishes." They stand at the sink in warm, soapy water while laughter happens behind them in the dining room. The plates are slick. The faucet squeaks when they turn it. Their sleeves get damp at the wrist. They dry and stack and keep their breathing even. Because this is the discipline. If you don't react, why, they can't claim you're unstable. If you don't plead, they can't say you're needy. If you don't fight, they can't say you started it. And still, it builds. Not as a montage of suffering, just a steady accumulation of small, plausible injuries, each one pretending to be nothing, until the sharper one comes. It's at another dinner, another special moment everyone is pretending is effortless. Someone tells a story about the protagonist. Not a cruel story on paper. A funny story. The kind that turns your personality into a flaw and sells it as entertainment. Their mother leads it because she always does. "Oh my God," she says, laughing before the punchline even arrives. "Remember when she thought she could—" She looks around the table, checking that the audience is ready. Then she delivers it, light and clean, like it's harmless. "She's always been our little joke." Little joke. Not said with anger, said with ownership. The room laughs, not maliciously, not like villains, like people laughing at something they've been taught is safe to laugh at. The protagonist's smile stays in place, just barely. Their fingers tighten around their water glass for one brief moment. The condensation makes the glass slippery, cold against skin. Then they loosen. They take a small sip. They swallow. "Yeah," they say softly, like agreement, like compliance. And they stand. "I'll grab more napkins," they add, already moving toward the kitchen, already making themselves useful. Because they still won't analyze it out loud. They still won't give the room a lecture. They just keep walking, calm, decontrolled, while the words echo behind their ribs with the same message they started with, a joke. And somewhere, in that quiet kitchen, under fluorescent light and the hum of the refrigerator, the inevitability settles again. Not rage, not revenge, just a clear, steady understanding. You can only brand someone for so long before the label becomes evidence. They don't arrive like a rescuer. No dramatic entrance. No, I heard what she said. No hand on your shoulder meant for the room to see. They arrive the way real witnesses arrive. Late, quiet, already observing before anyone thinks to perform. It's your aunt's husband. Married in, not raised in. The kind of relative who's technically family but not welded into the family's habits. He rarely visits. Not out of disdain, out of distance. Work, travel, life. And the polite kind of absence that keeps someone untrained. He shows up on a weekend where everyone acts like they've always been close. His coat comes off slowly. Keys placed in the same spot twice because he's checking the table, the faces, the mood. He remembers names without asking twice. He says hello to everyone in the same tone, steady even, no special warmth for the favorite, and no special coldness for the difficult one. That alone makes him noticeable. People like your mother are used to controlling the weather in a room. They're used to watching someone enter and immediately measuring, will this person echo me? Will they challenge me? He does neither. He simply sees. At the restaurant, he takes the seat that lets him watch the whole table without looking like he's watching. Side angle, not the head, not the center. Close enough to be included, far enough to stay unclaimed. He doesn't jump into conversation to be liked. He asks neutral questions that sound like logistics but function like calibration. What time did you all get here? Did they validate parking? Is the check split or together? Small questions, clean questions, the kind that don't invite emotional performance. And he listens the way professionals listen, without reacting early. When your sister talks, he nods once, polite. When your mother laughs, he doesn't automatically join in. He lets the laugh finish and then returns to his water like his body doesn't need to participate to belong. He's present, but not recruitable. You notice him because his attention doesn't come with pressure. He doesn't comfort you. He doesn't lean in and whisper, "Are you okay?" Not because he doesn't care, because comfort in a family like this becomes evidence. It gets used. It gets quoted. He doesn't argue with your mother. He doesn't correct her. He doesn't take your side in a way that would hand her the victim costume. He simply watches, quietly, completely. His signature is subtle if you're not looking for it. He writes things down, not like a detective, like a man who lives by paper trails. A small notebook, black cover. A pen that clicks softly, once, and then doesn't click again. When the server lists specials, he notes them. When someone mentions a time, dinner moved to 5, he writes it. When the waitress says, "I'll be right back with the card reader," he marks it like a habit. Not obsessive. Procedural. He keeps receipts without announcing that he keeps receipts. He references policies the way other people reference feelings. Just so we're clear, usually, it's, and his voice never rises. Not once. That's what gives him institutional gravity. He speaks like someone whose job has taught him that the truth doesn't need volume, just sequence. Your mother clocks him, eventually. Not consciously, maybe, but something in her posture adjusts when he's in the room. She becomes a fraction more careful with her jokes, like she's testing whether they land the same way on an untrained audience. He remains unresponsive to bait. No laughter when it's cruelty dressed as humor. No wince that would invite a performance. No eyebrow raise that would start a debate. Just quiet observation. Then it happens. The small moment that proves he's not just nice, he's tracking. The bill folder arrives. Leather edge, clean fold. The server sets it down with practiced neutrality. Your mother's hand moves first. Automatic. Possessive. fingers already reaching as if the transaction is hers to narrate. And the ally's eyes flick, not to her face, to the card terminal, to the screen, to the placement of the folder, to the exact moment her hand covers what shouldn't be covered. It's so quick most people miss it. You don't. Because when someone has lived in your orbit long enough, you learn the difference between looking and noticing. He doesn't stop her. He doesn't call it out. He doesn't make it a scene. He just opens the notebook again, calm as breathing, and writes one short line. Click. Ink. Close. The only thing he says, if he says anything at all, is almost nothing. A minimal acknowledgement, offered to the server or to no one in particular. Got it. 2 words. Neutral, flat, not comfort, not confrontation. A witness filing a moment away. And the strange relief is immediate, even if you don't let your face show it. Because for once, the room contains someone who isn't buying the story. Someone credible. Someone quiet. Someone who will speak later, when it matters, without needing to raise his voice to be believed. The decision doesn't arrive as a speech. It arrives as a quiet shift in posture. Same family, same table, same tones that can cut without leaving a mark. But inside the protagonist, something stops reaching for agreement. Something stops trying to be understood by people invested in misunderstanding. A private protocol forms, clean, unemotional, almost administrative. Stop debating reality. Start collecting it. Because debate is where your mother wins. Debate is where she interrupts, reframes, rewrites. Debate is where she turns your memory into a personality flaw. Documentation doesn't argue back. So from that week on, the protagonist changes how they move through every interaction. Not colder, not crueler, more confirmable. They keep their messages polite and short. They keep their replies boring enough to screenshot. They stop sending paragraphs that can be read as tone. They start using language that sounds like work email. Understood. Thanks for letting me know. I'll do X by Y. And the strange thing is, nobody notices at first. Because compliance looks the same from the outside, the protagonist still shows up, still brings the dessert, still offers to help, still nods, still smiles. But now they're doing it with a pen in their pocket. Not literally. Sometimes it's just the phone in their hand, screen dimmed, thumb steady, saving what used to vanish. A montage begins. But it's not cinematic in the obvious way. It's grounded, repeatable, the kind of work you do in silence while other people are laughing in the next room. A group text pops up. Dinner moved to 5. No apology. No reason. Just a new time, like you're a calendar slot, not a person. The protagonist doesn't respond with, I wish you'd told me earlier. They don't mention the last time, or the time before that. They don't ask for fairness like it's a favor. They reply, understood. I'll be there at 5. Then, screenshot. A notification arrives later. Oops, we forgot to tell you LOL. Screenshot. A photo shows up on social media from last weekend. Everyone's smiling, the caption warm, the crop clean. The protagonist is missing. Screenshot. A gift receipt is crumpled in the bottom of a bag. Clearance aisle, last-minute purchase. Date stamped an hour before they arrived. The protagonist smooths it flat on the counter, takes a picture, and slides it into an envelope. Not to prove anyone is bad, to prove a pattern is real. The calendar fills quietly, not with emotions, entries. Dinner moved? No notice. Seat saved for sister. Arrived already eating. Photo posted, cropped. No adjectives, no diagnosis, no commentary. Just facts, dated. And when the family leaves voicemails, because sometimes your mother prefers her voice, the way it can sound reasonable while dismissing you, the protagonist saves those too. Not the ones where she's obviously cruel. Those are rare. The ones where she sounds calm. "Oh, honey, don't make this into a thing. It's not a big deal. You're fine. You always land on your feet." The tone is soft enough to fool strangers, and that's why it matters. Saved. Then come the payments. This is where the story starts tightening its own wire. A text at 11:14 p.m. "Can you cover your share? We'll settle later." No greeting, no please, just a request framed like an assumption. In the past, the protagonist might have hesitated, might have asked questions, might have tried to negotiate like money wasn't also a way to rank people. Now they do something simpler. They pay immediately, not out of fear, out of clarity. They send the transfer. They save the confirmation. They screenshot the bank alert. They label it with the date and the event. Then they reply with a single neutral line. Paid. Confirming $___ sent. No edge, no accusation, clean proof. When you stop arguing, the only thing left is the record. And the record grows. Invitation changes. Forgotten messages. Mere requests disguised as jokes. Little costs that always seem to float toward the same person. It's not dramatic enough to go viral. It's exactly dramatic enough to hold up under a fluorescent light. Meanwhile, the protagonist keeps their demeanor unchanged in person. That's part of the protocol. At dinners, they still offer, "I can get the dishes." They still smile when someone calls them independent. They still take the end chair without comment. But they stop cushioning consequences. That's the difference. When dinner moves and they arrive late to everyone already eating, they don't scramble to pretend it's fine by overperforming helpfulness. They don't rush to prove they're not offended. They take their time. They wash their hands slowly. They sit when there's a seat. If there isn't, they wait until someone makes one. Not a protest, a refusal to patch over what someone else broke. When a photo crops them out, they don't send a joking reply to make it comfortable. They say nothing. Silence becomes a mirror. People hate mirrors. Then you start to see the hidden pressure point, not explained yet, just visible in behavior. Your parents care about how things look. Not in the shallow way, deeper, strategic. They want the family to appear close, generous, normal. They want stories that sound tidy when repeated. They want to be seen as fair, especially by outsiders. And you notice it in the little spikes of energy. How quickly your mother corrects someone if they imply favoritism. How she laughs too loudly when a joke doesn't land. How she performs warmth when the wrong person is watching. That's the pressure point. Image management. It's not a moral weakness. It's a structural one, because image requires cooperation, and the protagonist is quietly withdrawing it. Not by making accusations, not by posting online, not by calling extended family, by becoming impossible to rewrite. The ally remains in the orbit exactly as before. Present, quiet, procedural. Sometimes they're casually added to a group reservation text because it's easier. Sometimes they're CC'd on an email chain about plans. Sometimes they're at the table when your mother says something she expects to evaporate after dessert. They don't intervene. They don't comfort. They don't become the protagonist's spokesperson. They just stay included in the thread. Stay present for the logistics. Stay available as a witness who wasn't recruited, which makes them harder to dismiss later. And the protagonist never sets traps. That part matters. They don't bait anyone into cruelty. They don't provoke. They don't record secret audio with shaky hands in a bathroom. They simply stop doing what they've always done, smoothing the story so the family can keep pretending. They stop offering their own face as a landing pad for everyone else's bad behavior. They keep things polite, short, confirmable. They let each moment be what it is. And as the months stack up, something subtle happens at the table. The jokes start to require more effort. Why your mother has to push them a little harder to get the same laugh. She repeats lines. She checks faces. She looks for the old reflex. Your embarrassment, your apology, your quick little smile that tells everyone it's safe to laugh. But the protagonist isn't feeding it anymore. They're still calm, still moral, still present, just no longer editable. That's the delayed power build. Quiet enough that nobody can accuse them of plotting. And solid enough that, when the reckoning finally arrives in that room with rules and witnesses, it won't feel like a surprise. It'll feel like the only possible ending to a story that finally stopped being told by the loudest person at the table. It doesn't happen in a living room. It doesn't happen in the car after dinner, when your mother can cry on cue and your sister can sigh like she's exhausted by your existence. It happens somewhere with fluorescent lights, somewhere with rules, somewhere the air itself feels monitored. A jewelry store, midday, weekday, quiet enough that every sound has edges, glass cases, soft carpet, the faint chemical smell of cleaned metal. A screen behind the counter looping the same slow-motion close-ups of rings turning in perfect light. There's a scheduled appointment, a name on a clipboard, a sales associate who's polite in the way that's meant to prevent chaos, and cameras, small, tucked into corners, watching without blinking. No escape routes. No, we'll talk at home. Your mother chose this place because it looks good, public, elegant, controlled. Isha's setting where she can perform generosity and make you look unreasonable inside it. She walks in like she belongs to the brand. She speaks to the associate with that smooth, practiced warmth. First name, if she catches it. A quick laugh at a harmless joke. A touch too familiar too quickly. Your sister matches her pace, shoulder-to-shoulder alignment. The kind of unity that makes you look like the odd number. You're there because you were told you needed to be there. A quick appointment, a simple exchange, a little upgrade situation. The words are vague on purpose. Vague keeps you compliant. The associate, young, careful, gestures toward the counter. We'll just need the original method of payment and an ID for the return, and then we can look at options. The sentence is routine, but you watch your mother's hand. It moves before anyone finishes speaking. The bill folder from last time isn't here, but she carries the same energy. Ownership. The transaction is hers, the narrative is hers, and you are the character she's placing into a role. And right on cue, she places you. The associate smiles politely. So who is returning the item today? Your mother answers too quickly. She is, she says, nodding toward you, like she's handing over a task. Then, without missing a beat, she turns the story into a diagnosis. She's very sensitive, your mother adds. Soft laugh, eyes rolling upward like it's charming. So if she seems a little tense, that's just how she is. She's setting the verdict before the facts. You don't react. Not because it doesn't sting, because reacting is what she's counting on. You keep your eyes on the counter display. When you keep your hands still at your sides, your posture stays neutral. No defensive cross of arms that can be described as attitude. The associate gives a polite nod that says, "I've seen worse," but their eyes flick, briefly, to you, as if to confirm what kind of person you are going to be. Your mother continues, because the room hasn't stopped her. She's always making scenes, she says, still smiling, still gentle. Even when we're trying to do something nice. Nice. That word. always use like a shield. Your sister steps in with the polished jab, smooth enough to sound like concern. They love being the victim, she says, voice low, controlled. It's kind of their thing. Kind of their thing. A sentence designed to stick to you like lint. A label that makes any response look like proof. You give them nothing. And the associate asks you a simple question. And do you have the receipt? You answer with one word. Yes. Your voice is quiet, calm, not small, just controlled. Your mother's smile tightens by a millimeter, because one-word answers don't give her anything to twist. The associate nods. Great. And the card used for the purchase? Your mother's hand taps her purse once, absent. A little tell, like she's searching for control through movement. She doesn't have it. Your mother says quickly, jumping in again. It was complicated. We handled it. Handled it. The associate pauses, still polite. Okay. For returns, we'll need the original card or we can issue store credit to the purchaser, depending on the payment method. Policy language. Neutral, non-emotional. Your mother leans forward, warmth turning sharp underneath. Well, why we're her parents, she says, like that should override the system. We paid for it. We're just trying to fix this before she looks at you with a small public sigh. Gets upset. She's threatening your reaction as leverage in front of witnesses. You don't correct her. You don't say, that's not true. You don't give a speech about the past or fairness or how often you've been turned into a joke. You let the associate keep talking. Because the associate is not part of your family. They don't owe your mother her storyline. They owe the store its procedures. The associate turns the screen slightly. Do you have the purchase confirmation? Email, statement, anything with the transaction number? Your mother laughs. Too bright. Oh my God, she says, like the question is silly. See? This is what I mean. She's always turning things into paperwork. Paperwork. She says it like it's a character flaw. But the room you're in is made of paperwork. Your sister adds, soft and surgical. This is exactly why it's hard to do anything for them. You keep your eyes steady. You answer only what you're asked. The associate looks at you again. Do you have any proof of purchase? Yes. One word again. You reach into your bag calmly, slowly, like you're doing a normal errand. Your fingers don't shake. Your breathing stays even. You pull out your phone and tap twice. No dramatic flourish. Just a screen lighting up. Your mother's eyes flicker, fast, toward the phone. Then back to the associate. Then back to you. A small recalculation. Because she can feel the center of gravity moving away from her voice. You hold the phone out, angled toward the associate, not toward your mother. I have the confirmation, you say, and the authorization. Short sentence, concrete, no emotion words, no accusations. Your mother interrupts, because she has to. Calm is starving her. She's being ungrateful, your mother says, still smiling, still sweet enough to be plausible. We take her out, we try to include her, and she acts like we've done something wrong. Ungrateful, sensitive, scene maker, 3 labels, a clean smear, easy to remember, easy to repeat. The associate doesn't react, but they do something more important. They slow down. They begin tracking. You can see it in their posture. Shoulders settle, expression neutral, attention narrowing to process. Witnesses always start like that. Not with outrage, with procedure. Your mother, sensing the shift, escalates. Not louder, but sharper. She leans into the performance. Honestly, she says, glancing around the store like she's recruiting the room, we're just trying to do something nice. And she pauses, The way people pause when they want the audience to fill in something ugly without them saying it. You know. Your sister's mouth curves, sympathetic. It's exhausting. You don't debate. You don't defend your character. You don't say, "I'm not like that." Because that sentence is a trap. It puts your identity on trial in public. Instead, you stay inside the only thing that can't be argued with: facts. The associate looks at the screen, then back up. Okay, this helps. Thank you. Your mother's smile falters again, just slightly. Because someone just thanked you for being prepared. The room is rewarding the behavior she spent years punishing. Then the store's no-escape mechanic arrives. Quiet, official, unavoidable. The associate sets the phone down gently on the counter, still visible, and turns their own monitor toward themselves. "I'm going to pull up the transaction," they say. "One moment." Keys click. A small printer hums somewhere behind the counter. The store is quiet enough that the sound feels loud. Your mother shifts her weight. Your sister's gaze drops to the glass case, suddenly interested in nothing. The associate continues, voice calm. "To proceed, I'll need to verify the purchaser. May I see an ID?" Not, "Can you?" "May I?" Policy wearing manners. Your mother's hand freezes near her purse, and you don't look at her. You look at the associate. You reach for your wallet with the same calm you used to pick up a fork in candlelight. The fluorescent lights catch the edge of your ID as you slide it out. The associate holds their hand out. The cameras keep watching. And somewhere behind your mother's smile, you can feel it. The first real panic. Not yours. Hers. Because the narrative attack is running out of air. And the store's terminal, quiet, procedural, beeps again, like a metronome marking the moment right before the flip. The pivot doesn't start with a shout. It starts with an adult sentence from someone who doesn't belong to your family. And the associate keeps your ID in their hand for 1 second longer than necessary, just long enough to complete the check without rushing, just long enough to make the moment feel official. Then they look up, eyes neutral, voice still gentle. "Okay," they say. "For the record, who originally paid for this purchase?" There it is, a procedural question that demands specifics. Not vibes, not stories, not, "You know how she is." Who paid? Your mother's smile returns fast, like a reflex. She gestures vaguely, as if the truth is a matter of tone. "We did," she says. "We're her parents. We handled it." The sister nods along, polished, supportive, already ready to repeat the line later. The associate doesn't argue. They simply angle their monitor slightly, reading something the rest of you can't see. "I'm asking because the transaction is tied to a specific card and name," they say. "And our policy requires the purchaser to be verified for a return or upgrade. So I need a clear answer. Whose card was used?" Your mother's hand goes to her purse again, too fast. The movement is small, but it's a tell. Like a magician reaching for the pocket before the trick is explained. Your sister speaks like she's helping. "It's private," she says, soft voice, like confidentiality is a moral shield. "Can we not do this in front of everyone?" The irony is clean enough to cut. In front of everyone is exactly where they've always done it to you. The associate's smile doesn't change, but their tone tightens into policy. "I understand," they say, "but to proceed, I need verification." No anger, no judgment, just a locked door that only facts can open. And the protagonist doesn't flinch. No sigh, no eye roll, no finally. They just nod once. "Okay," they say. And then, calmly, like they're paying a utility bill, they begin producing the record. Phone unlocked. 2 taps. A folder that isn't labeled dramatically, just dated. They hold the screen out again. This is the confirmation email, they say, voice low. It has the date and time. Scroll. And this is the payment authorization. Another tap. Same day. Scroll. And this is the transfer from my account to cover the charge. They add. Still neutral, still not explaining beyond what's necessary, with the confirmation number. Each item is simple, concrete, timestamps, names, proofs, no speeches, no character defense. Just, here's what happened. Your mother tries to interrupt because she has to. A record is suffocating her. That's not what I meant, she says quickly, laugh in her voice like she can turn this into a misunderstanding. We were going to... The sister steps in smoothly. You're misunderstanding, she says, like you're translating the world wrong on purpose. This is exactly what we're talking about. They take everything and... The associate lifts one hand slightly, not aggressive, just the universal pause gesture of someone trained to control a counter. One moment, they say. I'm going to read this back to make sure I have it correct. When a witness repeats your facts out loud, it stops being your opinion. They glance down. Purchase date, February 14th. They say, reading from the screen. Card ending in... Your mother's eyes snap to the associate's mouth, and the purchaser name matches the ID presented. They look up again. So, the associate says, still polite, the purchaser is you. They don't say it like a victory. They say it like a printed label. Your mother's smile breaks. Not fully, but enough. A fracture. Her voice sharpens just a shade. Well, yes, but is where her narrative usually slips in. But is where she turns a fact into a feeling, and a feeling into a verdict. The associate doesn't take the bait. Thank you, they say. Now, for returns and upgrades, the purchaser has to authorize the change. That means the purchaser must either present the original card or complete the transaction today. Your mother clears her throat. The sound is small, dry. We can do that, she says too quickly. The sister nods, eager. Of course we can, she adds, smiling at the associate like she's smoothing over a child's tantrum. And your mother reaches into her purse. It's not dramatic, the way she does it. It's casual on the surface, like she's done this 1,000 times, like she's always been in control. But her fingers fumble slightly with the wallet. A corner catches. A pause that shouldn't be there. She slides the card out. The associate takes it with the same neutral care they'd take any card. They insert it into the terminal. The machine makes a soft beep. Then another. The screen glows. Processing. Your mother's face goes still. Too still. Like she's trying to freeze the moment into something she can later rewrite. The sister's eyes flick to your mother's mouth, watching for cues. The associate waits. The store is quiet enough that you can hear the faint hum of lights overhead, the distant chime of a door opening and closing at the front, the tiny squeak of a stool shifting behind the counter. Then the terminal beeps again. A different beep. The kind that doesn't sound like approval. The associate's expression remains professional, but they don't hide the screen. They angle it the way they're trained to, visible to the cardholder. Okay, they say, tone unchanged. It looks like this card was declined. Declined. A single word that detaches the jewelry from the story your mother has been telling for years. Because now Valentine's diamonds aren't a gift. They're an attempted charge. Declined. Under bright store lights with cameras in the corners. Your mother blinks once. She laughs. Too fast. Too high. Oh, that's weird, she says. Try it again. Control attempt. Immediate. Automatic. The associate nods, still calm. We can attempt one more time, they say. But if it declines again, policy requires we use a different payment method or we stop the transaction. They don't say it like punishment. They say it like gravity. They try again. Beep. Processing. Your mother's jaw tightens. The sister shifts her weight, eyes dropping to the glass case like she's suddenly fascinated by reflections. Beep. Declined. The word doesn't need to be said twice. The screen says it for them. And something happens in the room that isn't loud, but it's seismic. The narrative collapses. Because your mother's favorite weapon has always been appearance. Generosity performed, stability implied, authority assumed. A declined card in front of witnesses strips all of that down to a bare procedural truth. She wasn't offering you diamonds. She was offering you a stage. And when the stage demanded payment, the performance failed. Your mother moves fast to rewrite because she can't sit inside facts. It's probably the bank, she says, already building an external villain. Fraud protection. These things happen. The sister jumps in, polished. Yeah, it's a security thing, she says, smiling too brightly. We'll handle it privately. Privately. Always back to private, where she can edit the ending. The associate stays anchored. If it's fraud protection, your bank can confirm, they say. But at this time, we cannot proceed with the upgrade or return. They glance down at the monitor again. And I do have to note the declined attempts on the transaction. They add, matter of fact. It's part of our record. Record. That word lands differently than bank issue, because record is what your mother can't charm. And that's when the silent ally finally speaks. Not loudly, not triumphantly, not as a savior, just late, minimal, factual, with the same tone they used when ordering water. I can clarify. Your aunt's husband says from his quiet seat a few steps back, as if he's been there the whole time, because he has. Everyone turns, because even your mother can't pretend he doesn't exist. He holds a small notebook in one hand, a pen in the other. He doesn't look at your mother first. He looks at the associate. I'm in bank compliance, he says, without pride, like it's just the reason he knows what he knows. If you're seeing multiple declines, it's typically either insufficient available credit, a limit, or a restriction on the account. He flips one page. And, he adds, still calm, there have been authorization holds on similar purchases before. The timing matches. No accusation, no caught you. Just, here is what happens. Your mother's face tightens, a smile forced back into place like tape. That's, she begins. That's not. Her voice speeds up. The rewrite is coming. That's not what I meant. We were going to pay. We always intended to. This is private. Why are we? The ally doesn't argue. He simply stops her rewrite by staying inside the lanes of fact. I'm not commenting on intent, he says. Just process. Process. It's the most devastating word in the room because process doesn't care how nice you sound. The associate nods slowly, grateful for something they can cite without emotion. Thank you, they say. Then they turn back to your mother. At this point, we'll need an alternate form of payment in the purchaser's name to proceed. Otherwise, the appointment ends here. Your mother's eyes flick around the store. There are other customers now. 2 near the engagement rings, 1 older couple by the watches. A staff member at the front desk glances over, not nosy, just aware. Witnesses. Your mother's smile becomes brittle. She tries one last angle, soft voice, public warmth. Honey, she says, turning to you like she's about to reclaim the concerned parent costume. You're making this into a scene. There it is again. The identity branding, scene maker, sensitive, victim, joke. But this time, it doesn't land. Because the scene isn't your emotion, it's her declined card. The cheap gag gift from that restaurant, the joke, is suddenly exposed for what it always was: deliberate branding. A way to keep you small while she stayed safe behind performance, and the room can feel it, not in a dramatic way, in the way people get quiet when a lie loses its oxygen. The protagonist stays composed. No smile, no frown, no victory face. They don't turn to the sister. They don't look at their mother like she's finally been caught. They simply take their phone back from the counter, slow and steady, and slide their ID into their wallet. Okay, they say. Same word they've used all along, except now it sounds like closure, not compliance. The associate, still professional, offers a final procedural statement. I'll note that the return and upgrade were unable to proceed due to payment verification, they say. If you'd like to reschedule, you can contact us with the correct documentation and payment method. Reschedule. A way out that requires truth. Your mother opens her mouth again. Maybe to joke, maybe to blame you, maybe to demand privacy like privacy is her natural habitat. But the ally's notebook closes with a soft, final sound. And the protagonist doesn't fill the silence. They let it sit. They let the room hold the facts. They let the damage happen the way consequences are supposed to happen. Visible, non-violent, non-spiteful. Because the goal was never to humiliate anyone. It was to stop being rewritten. And in that quiet jewelry store, under bright lights and quiet cameras, the villains lose what they've always relied on: control, narrative, access, while the protagonist gains something smaller, cleaner, and permanent: peace. Not because they proved they weren't a joke, because finally, the room saw who needed them to be one. And the associate is still holding the terminal like it's just another Tuesday. The screen still says what it says. Decline doesn't soften because your mother smiles. Your mother tries anyway. She keeps the warm voice, the one meant for public spaces, the one that makes you sound unreasonable if you don't match it. Well, she says, laugh threaded through it, this is just embarrassing. Can you just... She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't have to. The expectation is old, reflexive. You'll fix it. You'll pull out your own card. You'll make it disappear. You'll save the moment so she can still walk out of the store looking generous instead of exposed. Your sister turns slightly, not even looking at you directly, as if asking would cheapen her. She can, your sister says to the associate, almost casual. She's got it. Like you're not a person. Like you're a function. A cushion. The protagonist doesn't flinch. No sigh. No eye contact with the sister that could become a scene. No glance at the customers nearby to see if they're watching. They keep their voice low. They keep their words clean. I'm not paying for that, they say. Not angry, not performative, just accurate. A beat passes. Your mother's smile tightens into something thin. Excuse me? She says, as if you just swore. The associate looks between you. Professional neutrality struggling to find footing. The protagonist doesn't fill the air with explanation. They don't say, after everything you've done. They don't list the years. They don't pull out the whole folder and start reading the receipts like poetry, because they could. They have leverage now. They have documentation that could make this uglier in seconds. They have witnesses, cameras, policy language that can turn private cruelty into public fact. But they don't do it. That's the mercy. They choose the smallest action that closes the escape route without turning into humiliation. They reach into their wallet and pull out their card. Not as a rescue, but as a boundary. I can pay my portion of what I agreed to, they say, calmly. Not the upgrade. The sentence lands with the weight of adulthood. Fairness. not punishment. Your mother's eyes flash, quick, sharp, because she hears what's really being said. You don't get to spend my stability on your image anymore. Your sister laughs once, the kind of laugh that's meant to shame you back into your role. "Oh my God," she says. "You're doing this now?" The protagonist doesn't turn their head. They don't take the bait. They look at the associate instead, because the associate is the lane that can't be rewritten. "I'm not here to punish anyone," the protagonist says, voice steady. "I'm here to be accurate, quotable, clean, undeniable." The ally, who has said almost nothing up to this point, backs the mercy the only way he knows how, through procedure. He doesn't argue with your mother. He doesn't lecture your sister. He doesn't offer moral commentary that could give them something to fight. He simply nods once. "We will follow policy," he says quietly. Then he's done. No more words. Just the notebook in his hand like a closed door. The associate exhales, tiny, relieved, because policy is a language they can speak without getting hurt. "Okay," they say. "If you're not the purchaser, you can't complete the upgrade, and since the purchaser's card is declining, we can't proceed today." Visible consequence, stated out loud. No drama, no violence, no revenge, just a halted purchase, a stopped story. Your mother tries to patch it with speed. "We'll just use another card," she says too brightly, already rummaging again. But now she's doing it with eyes on her, with the associate watching, with the record already started, with the quiet knowledge that the first card declined, twice, inside a store built for polished appearances. She pulls out a second card. The associate takes it, runs it, and the terminal pauses again, processing long enough to feel like a held breath. Then another soft beep. The associate's expression doesn't change, but their voice does that careful tightening again. This card is also unavailable for this transaction," they say. Unavailable. Not a judgment, not a diagnosis, a door that doesn't open. Your sister's face shifts, just for a second before she controls it. The polished confidence cracks at the edge. "So, what now?" she asks, too quickly. Now is the part your mother can't control. Because the new reality has arrived, and it doesn't require the protagonist to do anything cruel. The consequences are self-inflicted, documented, witnessed. The associate turns the monitor slightly back toward themselves. "At this point," they say, "the appointment ends. If you'd like to reschedule, we'll need verified payment from the purchaser. I'll also note the declined attempts and the incomplete transaction. Note. Record. Your mother's throat works like she's swallowing something bitter. But," she starts. The protagonist doesn't argue. They don't smirk. They don't twist the knife. They don't add commentary for the benefit of the customers nearby. They simply put their card back in their wallet. They pick up their phone. They nod once at the associate. "Thank you," they say. Then, still calm, they turn to leave. Not storming, not running. A clean departure that tells the room everything without saying it. "I'm not your cushion anymore." Behind them, their mother is still standing at the counter with her smile half-built and nowhere to put it. Their sister is still there, suddenly without the upgrade, suddenly without the narrative. And the ally doesn't follow with fanfare. He just stands, adjusts his coat, and gives the associate the smallest professional nod, like closing out a file. The protagonist reaches the door, and the store chime sounds once. Soft, polite. And they step into daylight with the same restrained composure they walked in with. Except now it isn't defensive. It's free. Universal mirror ending. Maybe you've been the reliable one, the one who shows up, the one who doesn't complain, the quiet fixer in the background while everyone else gets to be loud, messy, complicated, forgiven. You're the easy child, the one who doesn't ask for much, the one they stopped worrying about because you learned early that needing something made you a problem. And the strangest part? You didn't audition for that role. You just lived through something once. Maybe you handled it well, maybe you stayed calm when everyone else fell apart. And suddenly that became your job. Forever. Until the day you couldn't do it anymore. And then you became the dramatic one. And the one making it about you. The one who changed. The one who's holding grudges because you finally named what was always true. It's not that you wanted to fight. You just wanted to stop translating. Stop softening. Stop standing between their comfort and the facts. And when you did, when you let the truth sit there, unmanaged, they didn't know what to do with you. Because the role you'd been playing wasn't optional, it was structural. They needed you to absorb it, to smooth it over, to make it make sense. When you stopped, the whole story collapsed. That's not revenge, that's accuracy. Revenge is heat. It's performance. It's proving something to people who already decided not to see you. Accuracy is colder, quieter. It's just refusing to lie anymore. And letting other people who are always watching, finally say what they saw. Emma didn't destroy Richard. She didn't have to. She just stopped protecting him from himself, stopped managing his reputation, stopped playing the role that made his version of events possible. And once she stepped out of the way, the truth was just there, waiting. That's what happens when you've been the reliable one for too long. You think no one's paying attention. You think your silence is invisible. But it's not. There are people who've been watching the whole time, people who didn't speak up because you didn't, people who were waiting to see if you'd ever stop carrying it alone. And when you do, when you finally let go, they step in. Not because you asked, because the truth was always obvious. You were just the only one still pretending it wasn't. Maybe that's what justice actually is. Not punishment, not some dramatic reckoning. Just the moment when the story finally matches the facts. When the people who were always quiet say it out loud. When you stop managing the narrative and reality fills the space. You don't have to win. You don't have to make them sorry. You just have to stop performing the role they wrote for you and let the truth be exactly as loud as it always was. Sometimes the loudest thing you do is stop covering the truth.